This is just really a little preview about what's to come. And we wanted to bring in my colleagues who are going to be working very hard on these activities. Are we ready to, here we go. Nope, next slide. You'll find out who they are in a moment. There we go. Great. So I'm really pleased to have Clarence White and Carolina Herdeo here with me to talk about this new partnership I mentioned earlier this morning with Eastside Freedom Library. Very excited about this. I want to mention that this partnership was actually originally conceived by Damian Strange, former ACF member and artist here in the community. I want to give him a shout out for that. Carolina also recently joined the ACF team as our Director of Artist Support, and Clarence will be sharing more about Eastside Freedom Library and our partnership. I wanted to just take a moment to talk a little bit about why this partnership and why we're thinking about these themes as we move forward. As I mentioned earlier, we've had these gatherings, and of course you just heard with our commitment to racial equity, we think a lot about how we can lift up the stories, we can advocate for the relevance and the vitality of music today because it intersects with our world today. And it is through stories, through conversation, of course, through music that we can come together and we can learn different perspectives. We can have a shared experience. And I think this today is another example of that. Our theme this coming year is going to be immigration, identity, and the arts. And I just have to bring up my notes one more time, make sure I'm mentioning everybody's name. We are also going to be focusing on T. Boy's book, The Best We Could Do, which is part of the NEA Big Read, as is acknowledged here. And for those of you that haven't picked up a book, we have books in the back. Please do, they're free. Yep, all the way in the back there. We're also going to have these at each of our events. Among other books, music makers, composers who you'll hear from over the course of the year. Actually, the first one is going to be on October 15. So make sure you sign up for our mailing lists. You can sign up for Eastside Freedom Libraries as well as ACFs. You should anyway. And then you'll hear more about these activities. They will be both in person and online. And I also just want to mention that the NEA Big Read, which is again, the focus of the book, The Best We Could Do, is a program of the National Endowment for the Arts in partnership with Arts Midwest, and we're grateful for their support. So, Clarence, tell us a little bit more about Eastside Freedom Library and when you're excited about this partnership.
Well, we're excited as well. I think I should probably start by saying why this is such a great project for us. We are a library in that we have a lot of books. We've cataloged about 27,000 books, all of them donated to the library. Inside the library, you'll see the books. You'll also see a lot of artwork. And what you may or may not see is a lot of the other programming that really is strongly based in the arts. We are very much about telling a truer narrative of the society we live in than what we usually get. So that means telling stories. That means telling the stories that have been erased, marginalized, and not us telling them, but creating a space for other people to come in and not only tell the stories, but for them to be in conversation with a lot of other stories that have been X'd out, but also the stories that are predominant. And our collection, much like our programming, focuses on several areas. It focuses on history, a lot of labor history, but also social justice and immigration history. And we exist in a part of town, in the part of St. Paul, that has always been a landing place for immigrants for the past 150 years. Of course, it is Dakota land. And the Dakota presence is still there and speaking into the story of the place in very important ways. But what we see is a lot of people who come from marginalized backgrounds are living there as well. Talked about not only respecting people's artistry, but their right to the arts, and that is something that is one of the challenges we're working to overcome. So this partnership is really ideal for us. We love the idea that we are creating several kinds of access through this work, and that we are centering a story that really tells a truer story of how America exists and what it is. So we appreciate that.
Thank you. Caroline?
Thank you. And we also appreciate very much this collaboration. I had the pleasure of visiting a few days ago, and I was really amazed with the collections that you have and all the work that you do with the community. So it's really a pleasure. I'm particularly excited about this because you may have noticed by my accent, I'm also an immigrant, or I am an immigrant, I guess the only one here right now, first generation at least. So when I learned about this project and about the different sessions that are going to happen during the year, and the different books that we're going to approach, and the artists that are going to be part of the conversations, I obviously feel very connected with the theme. As a first-generation immigrant in the United States, and also somebody coming from Latin America who has a very particular relationship with the United States. We found this theme that we thought that it was intersectional with different communities of immigrants from different parts of the world, and particularly in the relationships, in the intergenerational relationships among those communities. Sometimes there's some disconnect. I still haven't experienced that because I'm first generation. But generations that have been in the United States for many years may have slowly, I guess I get detached from a lot of elements of culture, of values, that in an artist that express in the art that you do. So it's a complicated, very complicated theme of identity for an immigrant, and particularly a person of color coming into the United States with a white dominant culture. So suddenly seeing yourself as somebody different than what you think you are, because we form our ideas ourselves not only by our own experiences, but also by what other reflects on us. So I had the privilege of seeing artist friends that are third-generation immigrants suddenly feeling empowered to embrace and reconnect with that part of themselves. And that has been a beautiful process to observe. A lot of them never learned the language of their parents or grandparents, and now they're feeling that call. And seeing that expressed in music and in the art that they're doing, reconnected with traditional instruments, folk traditions. It's something that it's a beautiful thing to see happening now. So, well, again, I feel very connected, and there's going to be sessions that work with different communities of immigrants. So very much looking forward to that.
And I'll just build on what you were saying too. I think this was already something that was in conversation at ACF this past year as we were working with some artists who, for example, were, as you were referring to, Carolina, that were really thinking about creating their original work and wanting to bring forward the cultural traditions from their family or historical instruments, and you know, trying to reconcile this dissonance of like really wanting to honor that background and their history while also feeling agency of what they were creating that was original work, and what was okay for them to name, what was okay for them to feel empowered to be flexible with, and what did it mean for them in their community. We also heard from artists who often feel like they're just pigeonholed because of this one, cultural identity that they have in terms of what their music should sound like or how they should be creating music. And of course, this is not only for music creators, and this is why I'm really excited to have this kind of broader conversation with the work that Eastside Freedom Library does already, because it will show up in language and storytelling and then just this different intersection as we think about the arts and culture in a much broader sense, in the spirit of bringing more people together and bringing the shared experience to all of you. You want to?
Yeah, I think the generational piece is really powerful for us. Again, I said that we work on the east side of St. Paul, and we get to see that in real time. We have not only generations of a certain strain of immigration or migration, but we get to see it in different communities in different stages, and those existing together, and how people are working to not only preserve the stories that they came here with, which our history has tended to erase. You know, often becoming American is about erasing who you are, and adopting not just this thing called Americanism or being American, but this thing called whiteness, and having a necessary kind of supremacy and kind of various kinds of violence to maintain that imposed on whatever interaction happens. But you know, we're seeing those stories develop in the new generations. And I think PaviElle said something that was really powerful, and something that I've thought of, you know, as I become older, I become a part of communities that have younger people. And I think the key to being wise isn't like telling all of the young people what you know and having them listen. It is being quiet, because what I know is already part of the story, and they already know it. The stuff that needs to be happening now is something they're better informed about than I am, and that's what it is. So, you know, it's a long story. It's being added to, and the library has been one of those places where people can come together in a space that we try and create that is safe, where those things can happen.
Well, I can just add to that there was a lot of discussion about using the word American. So as a Latin American, I'd like to acknowledge that that's a problematic word for Latin Americans. There are different official ways of naming this big piece of land, and Latin Americans grow up calling America. America is what in the United States is the Americas. So for us, we are Americans as well. So coming to the United States is quite shocking to feel left out of what for us it's the name of our continent, or our continent. So yeah, we discussed the problematics of that word, and we decided to stay away and focus in on, you know, the different communities of immigrants' experiences, and themselves being themselves, you know, not being American, just being themselves, with all the beauty that the diversity of views of life and love and relationships and values and creative practices implies.
Well, something we can't stay away from is the fact that our name is American Composers Forum. So obviously, these conversations are going to inform a lot of our own self-examination as an organization. We have currently defined that as US-based, including the sovereign nations and territories. And it obviously needs to be further reviewed as we think about, we've been now for years thinking about the word composer, not exclusively, but in addition to music creator, artist, and various other terms that people use to identify their artistry. And I think similarly, we need to have some very honest conversations about what the word American means. And I'm really interested in how we ourselves are going to bring that into our own learning at ACF as we have these conversations with our community here. Anything else either of you want to add as it relates to that? We're going to have obviously a lot more conversations coming up.
Just that people should go to our websites and sign up for the newsletters. We have a lot of conversations in various ways and formats about this sort of thing. You know, as you talk, what comes to mind is Erica Lee's work. Her latest book, I believe, is called America for Americans, and talks about, you know, what all of that means and how this dominant society has tried to frame that. And you know, there's another book that we were into called American Nations by Woodard. It's like, okay, we have this place that we call America. Is it one place? Is it one thing? No, there are 11 different really distinct nations that, of course, get blurred, but we have so many of these conversations, and they're ongoing, and they're making us smarter, and it allows us to listen to more people. And I really hope that people will not just join this big read effort, but the other conversations that are happening with our organizations and all of those organizations that we're in partnership with and that you're in partnership with. It is a lot, and the more and the broader, the better.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you to both of you for being here today. Thank you to all of you online and in person who joined us for this activity today. I want to remind you of some of the things we heard today, and please do go back and listen to the video because it's going to be much better coming from the people you heard from directly. But just to give you some takeaways and to leave you with some reminders, empower the young people. They have many ideas, as we've heard. They have incredible things to say, incredible things and I'm using we, I guess we decided 1990 or so was the cutoff line today. So anybody born before 1990, we have a lot to learn. And also empower the artists in your community. We heard a lot about that today as well. And I also want to encourage all of you that have a position of power, and you may have more power than you realize, by the way, to create that space, to create that agency, not for you, but for those artists and the young people creating today. I want to remind you to pick up a book, and we will have information shortly on our website about how you could get a book if you don't have one. I also just want to take a moment because in the spirit of this generational conversation we've been having throughout the day, there were some people from a previous generation that we've lost this year that were very close to ACF and were lions in their own time. And I'm just going to name three, and I'm sure I'm missing some people, but the three I just wanted to bring forward include Jack Heschler, who was married to Linda Heschler, longtime executive director of ACF, just incredible supporter, advocate, and many things for ACF. Mike McCarthy, who at one point was the board chair and also a longtime supporter, and George Fazanis, who was for a long time the concertmaster of Minnesota Orchestra, also board member, also very strong advocate for composers, an amazing person. We will miss them. All right, and just a few more thank yous. Bill and Susan Sands again for their wonderful generosity. Reminder, this project is supported in part by an award from the NEA, National Endowment for the Arts, and made possible by the voters of Minnesota, thank you, through a grant from the Minnesota State Arts Board, thanks to a legislative appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, as well as the I.A. O'Shaughnessy Foundation and the Lillian Wright and C. Emil Berglund Foundation. I want to thank all of our performers, panelists, contributors to today's event. PaviElle French, like there are no words. I'm just so grateful for her and how she inspires all of us. I want to thank True Art Speaks, Purple Playground, Walker West Music Academy, the Schubert Club, St. Paul Chamber Orchestra for partnering with us for PaviElle's residency, Liberation, Lifting Up Our Youth. Again, you can look on our website for more information. To the ACF board, there are 25, so I'm not going to name everybody, but I do want to acknowledge all of you for your incredible dedication and support in the leadership of Nirmala Rajasekar. I want to thank the dedicated ACF staff, who I will name right now: Amanda, Carolina, Chris, David, Del, Elisa, Paul, Natalie, Tim, and Xavier. Incredible to work with all of you. Claimer Space for producing, Walker West Music Academy for hosting, Line Break Media for making it possible for us to watch and listen to this event. And a reminder, please support the organizations you heard from today that will all be findable on our website, but I'll say them again: Walker West Music Academy, Purple Playground, True Art Speaks, and then maybe consider visiting composersforum.org and making a donation to support us in making these programs possible. Keep creating, listening, and advocating. Thank you to all of you.